beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to this post-game reaction. I finally got my mic working, so that's good news. But Lakers just played the Phoenix Suns out here in Palm Springs. Just got back from Acrisure Arena, and I am ready to break down the Lakers 118-114 loss. We had some NBA history made with LeBron James and Bronny James sharing the floor together. We had some crunch time, and the Lakers young guys getting some crunch time reps and trying to execute against another team. We had a crazy fan who had to be subdued by 6 security guards. That was just an insane spectacle. And I saw some footage that I wasn't able to see because of my vantage point from the arena, and he was just holding on to things, and apparently was arrested afterward, and just that was a crazy sequence there in the second half. But I think that the most important thing from this game was that the Lakers were up by 12 points in the first half with their projected rotation for opening night, which was the 5 starters plus Max Christie, Gabe Vincent, Jackson Hayes, and Dalton Knecht. And when 4 or 5 of those guys were on the floor at the same time, this group looked pretty good. And they were going up against the Phoenix Suns team that had all their starters other than Jusuf Nurkic. And this is a group that had given the Lakers some problems last season, especially later in the year. They had a couple of double-digit wins against the Lakers after LA opened the season 3-0 against Phoenix. So I thought that was encouraging with the way that the Lakers were able to physically dominate and overwhelm Phoenix in half court setting, and the offense had some really nice moments. So I think, like, from the Lakers' perspective, yes, they lost the game. They're 0-2, but as I said during the last post-game reaction, like, it's the preseason. Everybody needs to take a chill pill and really look at the process over the results. The results don't really matter. Like, I think at some point it would be good for the Lakers to get a win, and ideally for them, they don't go 0-6 in the preseason. But if there's a way for them to continue to kind of get these reps and just get better as a group, like, I think that's more important than the end result, especially when you have LeBron and AD resting in the second half, and again going into the break with a 12-point lead. So I want to quickly touch on the box score, and then I will get into my 3 takeaways, and then I will answer some of your questions. I am recording this on Riverside instead of StreamYard. StreamYard has just not been working for me. I've been having a ton of mic issues, and no matter how I configure my settings, the mic is just not connecting. So for now, I'm going to be trying out Riverside and see how it goes. But so, looking at the Lakers box score, AD, and I'm going to talk about AD and LeBron, so I'm not going to touch on them too much right now, but 17 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, team best plus 15 in his 18 minutes, hit a 3, and I just thought looked really good. Rui had 13 points and 8 rebounds, 6 to 8 from the floor. I thought the extra defensive attention that LeBron and AD drew opened up the middle of the floor for Rui, and you saw him operate against mismatches or just cut into open space and hit those patented like 8 to 12 foot jumpers that he's so good at. So I thought Rui looked much better with AD and LeBron in the front court, and kind of slotting him in that like number 3 role in terms of the front court hierarchy. And that was a much more natural position for him versus before, when, or rather, last game when Jackson Hayes and Max Christie were out there, and then all of a sudden Rui's more the go-to guy offensively among that group. LeBron had 19 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, couple blocks, including a very impressive block on Devin Booker. He showed he still has bounce. And LeBron finished 8 for 12 from the floor, hit a couple threes. Again, I'll touch on him in a little bit. D'Lo had 14 points, 6-12 shooting, hit a couple threes, 2 rebounds, 4 assists, and a steal. This was the first glimpse of what the new offense is going to look like in the new offensive hierarchy. And this was the second game to me where D'Lo is taking on a bit more of a scoring role, and he's a bit more of a finisher. And the ball's been more in Austin's hands, and he's been more of a playmaker. So speaking of Austin, 9 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists, a couple steals. So again, this is the second consecutive game he's had more assists than D'Lo, and I think has been creating more in the half court than D'Lo. He's still struggling with a shot, just 2 for 10, 0 for 7 on threes, but did get to the free throw line 5 for 5. So he's 15 of 15 through the first couple games at the free throw line. And it seems like he's been getting more of those calls that he was getting a couple of years ago versus last year. So I think that's a positive, but certainly Austin's been out of rhythm offensively in terms of his shot. And that's something that, I think will come during training camp or during the preseason. So I'm not worried about that, but it has been interesting to see the shift between D'Lo and Austin, and D'Lo becoming a little bit more of a scorer and Austin becoming more of that like initiator playmaker type. Off the bench, I think the most interesting thing to me was Max Christie, and I'm going to touch on the rotation with one of my takeaways, but he was the first Lakers bench player to come in the game, played a bench high 29 minutes, actually a team high 29 minutes, and 12 points, did struggle from the floor, just 3 of 14, 3 rebounds, an assist, and a steal. I think what was looking for his shot a little bit more than you want. Granted, some of the lineups he was with, it kind of makes sense that, especially looking at the way he was in Summer League in 2023, that Max would be a guy that would be looking to self-create a bit more in some of these lineups. But obviously, I don't think that's going to be his role in the regular season as much. You would like to see him shoot the ball better. He was just 2 for 8 on threes. But I think overall, Max's defensive energy and his role within the offense during the more normal portion of the game, that to me is, I think he's trending in the right direction. Dalton Knecht had 7 points, 3 for 9 shooting, 1 for 7 on threes. Didn't have the same impact offensively, but 3 assists. I thought he, had a good game in terms of finding the open man and creating for others, and missed the go-ahead or would have been game-winning jumper that led to Phoenix getting the dunk at the end that sealed the game. Jalen Hood-Schifino didn't play in the first half, and I thought that was interesting just because it seemed like the Lakers are going with their more normal rotation in the first half, and Jalen's clearly at best the 10th man right now, but potentially even lower. He had 9 points, 4-7 shooting, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. I thought had some nice moments again, and we've seen the progress from him. I don't think this was quite as good as his last game, but all things considered, I think Jalen is trending in the right direction. And Bronny had a pretty quiet game, 13 minutes, 0 points, 2 rebounds. Did have a dribble handoff 3 that he missed from LeBron, actually, and that would have been a cool moment had that been Bronny's first basket with his dad on the floor. But it was just cool to see those two share the floor. And then I think Bronny, I've said it, he's very raw right now, and he's going to need a lot of time in the G League. But so for him, it's really just about getting reps and experience and continuing to kind of 4 turnovers to 2 assists, that you don't want to see that, especially for a low usage guy like him. But again, I think that's to be expected. I don't have high expectations for Bronny even in preseason basketball. So I think for him, it's again just kind of learning, getting his feet wet. Gabe Vincent only played 11 minutes. I think in part that was because Cam Reddish came back. Cam Reddish played 10 minutes, hit a 3, had a steal, had a block. I thought had some solid moments. So Cam to me is probably the 10th guy in the rotation right now after the top 9. It's a battle between him and JHS. And then once Jared Vanderbilt and Christian Wood come back, then I think those guys will slot in ahead of them. Gabe it was a bit more quiet, just 6 points in his 11 minutes. But I think it was more of just they went with the younger guys in the second half, and it was a lot more Bronny, Cam, Max, Dalton, Jalen. So Gabe was more of a one-half player. And so, I think for him, he's been trending in the right direction. So I really think a lot of these guys have looked, for the most part, solid. I think the offense has looked good. I think the defense needs a lot of work, but part of that is just the personnel. And there's just not much you can do with some of the perimeter defensive personnel that the Lakers have, especially with Jared Vanderbilt out, especially with Christian Wood out. So I think it's going to be a bit of a trying to just smoke and mirror, like patch things together during the regular season, and also just kind of get by with their offense. And I think that's more so what they did in the first half. Like they had some good defensive sequences and stretches, but I thought it was just their offense was so good that it allowed them to set up their defense, and it just put a lot of pressure on the Suns. And this is a good matchup for the Lakers, certainly just based on how last season went. They won the season series 3-2, and they've been able to dominate Phoenix in the paint. So I think this is just also a good matchup for them. And that's partly why they had that double-digit lead. But let's get into the three takeaways. So takeaway number one: LeBron and Bronny made NBA history by being the first duo, first father-son duo to share the floor together. And it was a really cool moment. And, after, so pregame, we asked JJ about it, if he had planned it or if he was planning it, and he knew when it was going to be. And he said he wasn't quite sure, and he was still trying to figure it out. And he didn't want it to be like gimmicky, and he wanted it to come within the flow of a game. We find out post-game that he did tell LeBron and Bronny that they weren't going to be playing together today, and that this was something that had been planned. So for as transparent as JJ's been, that was like one of the few things he's kind of kept to himself. But I mean, it was really cool to see again, like when I saw them, because my vantage point, I was behind the Lakers bench. So I was able to see Bronny enter the huddle and sit down on the bench. And it was like, okay, is this actually about to happen? And then they got up and walked onto the floor. And then it was like, okay, this is happening. And so they played together for 4 minutes and 9 seconds. Bronny did not score. LeBron hit a 3 and had an and 1. And the Lakers were outscored by 4 points during that stretch. So it was a stretch where they went with Dalton and Bronny joined. I believe it was LeBron, Jackson, and then I'm forgetting who the fifth guy was. It might have been Rui or Max. I'm not quite sure. Let me know in the chat if like who that was, because I don't remember. But what I will say with that is, again, like I think once I kind of processed everything and was able to kind of take a step back, it was like, okay, this actually made sense that they did it this way. And this was probably the right way to do it, just because you diffuse the situation now where like it's technically happened. Like, yes, it'll happen at some point in the regular season, but I think like some of the steam from it has kind of been, let out of the bag, so to speak. So like you've gotten the pressure off of both of them in the situation. Like they had the moment, they shared the floor. We talked to both of them after the game, and now we can all kind of move forward with this, because this is sort of looming over everything. Like every time we talk to LeBron, we've been asking about Bronny. Every time we talk to Bronny, we've been asking about LeBron, and I'm sure that will continue to some extent. But it felt like this was the right way to do it, because, and I know JJ didn't want it to be gimmicky and he wanted to come in the flow of the game, but like realistically, Bronny is not going to be in the rotation. And if anything, like I think the first couple of games have confirmed that. Like he's just not. I just don't think he's ready. And I think if we're looking at the pecking order, like I would have Jalen Hood-Schifino ahead of him. I would have Cam Reddish ahead of him. So with the available guys, it's like kind of him versus Maxwell Lewis for like that 12th spot. But even if he's like the 12th man, JJ's talking about, and that's because Vando and Christian are out. So Lakers only have 13 available guys. So it's a battle between Maxwell and Bronny for that 12-13 spot. And, so even if he's the 12th guy, let's just argue, JJ said they're playing 9 guys. And I think if they play 10, it's probably going to be Cam or Jalen. So I think Bronny was realistically like not going to play, I think, to start the season, unless it was like a blowout situation. And that to me would be much more gimmicky than the way that they handled it now, right? Like if the Lakers are down, or in either direction, if the Lakers are up 20, down 20, and there's 5 minutes left in the game, and JJ puts in Bronny, and then he also subs in LeBron, like just to kind of check that box, like that to me is a bit more gimmicky than let's put both of our rookies in to start the second quarter. Like this was the way we wanted to use them according to JJ, like anyway. So I think there was an element obviously of like trying to make it work. Now that said, LeBron always starts the second quarter. So like that was his shift. And the Lakers went with a typical LeBron and AD shift in terms of like the first half and how they use those guys. But I thought it was awesome, right? And you had LeBron sticking up for Bronny, talk like when Bronny got the offensive foul, LeBron went up to the ref and complained on his behalf. And I think LeBron tends to do that anyway. So I'm not going to say that's like out of character for him, but I'm sure on some level it was, also the parental like perspective of standing up for your son. And I thought they both had some interesting things to say post game. Like LeBron was talking about just how it felt like not real. And when they walked out onto the floor and were picking up their defensive assignments, he was like looking at Bronny and it felt like the Matrix. And he was like, what's going on right now? And then he also mentioned, which like I think is a like, so the other context to this is that it was Bronny's 20th birthday. So the team celebrated at the team hotel today. They had a cake, they had cupcakes. And so LeBron, I mean, if you think about it from LeBron's perspective, like he's probably missed several of Bronny's birthdays because of, Bronny's birthday is October 6th. Like that's the beginning of the season. That's during training camp or the preseason. So LeBron is either missed birthdays or like not been able to spend the full day with Bronny in the past. And to have, this situation where they're staying at the same hotel and they're teammates and they get to go to the game together and they get to warm up together and they get to play together and then they get to leave the game together. Like that's a cool moment for LeBron as a father. And he talked about like just growing up without a dad and what that meant to him and just like being able to work with his son and share this moment and this experience with his son. So I think like I get, this has been a polarizing situation for a lot of people and everyone has their opinion on Bronny and this whole situation, him being a Laker, them playing together. But I think in terms of like ways this could have gone, this made the most sense in retrospect. And now it's behind us where, again, they will play at some point in the regular season. And who knows, maybe they end up trying to finagle the rotation into them playing on opening night or one of the first home games. But to me, now that this is kind of behind us, I think everyone can kind of move on. And it's still going to be a storyline to some extent. And when they officially play in a game together, because this is a preseason, you could argue it doesn't count. Like, I think it does. But I think like now it's kind of, again, like it's been diffused a little bit. So I think this is going to be less of a talking point, less of a distraction, and we can move forward and focus on real basketball. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions for both of them, right? Like it's not going to go away, but I think this was the right way to do it. And, so I think it was cool and it went about as expected. Cause I wasn't expecting, like, it would have been cool if they had like a fast break moment where Bronny threw a lob to him or something like that. Would have just been iconic and it would have tore the roof down. But, this was everyone trying to find their rhythm. Bronny is still going through like second game as a rookie. So then for me, takeaway number 2 was LeBron and AD looked like they were in regular season form. And it's funny to me because they've both been saying that throughout media day and training camp that they felt like playing in the Olympics was actually an advantage for them compared to being a disadvantage. And you've seen that happen several ways, depending, like, I think it really hurt Austin Reeves last year and he came in tired and a bit banged up and he just wasn't able to establish a rhythm until a couple months into the season. But you also see sometimes, especially with younger guys, they come in and they have a career year with the confidence and the experience. And guys talked about like learning from Kobe and trying to get to the gym at 6 a.m. and Kobe's been in there since 4 a.m. Right. And just like instilling that work ethic in them and everyone kind of leveling up to try and be on the best players, level. So I think, but that's younger guys, right? Like if anything, LeBron and AD coming in as the only 2 guys on this roster over 30. JJ's talked about like guys not being in game shape yet and guys needing to get their conditioning right. And he's like, basically all the young guys have been in here for 2 months. They're all in game, great game shape. They're all in great condition. It's the other guys, the older guys kind of in their like mid to late 20s that are not in that shape yet. And I think you saw that a little bit in game one with Rui and Austin and D'Lo. But LeBron and AD, to me, like AD, first play of the game, gets that lob dunk out of a Chicago action, dribble handoff with Austin, and AD screens for him, dives, gets the lob. He had another lob. He had another cut for a dunk. He hit a three. He took, I believe, have it here. It took 3 threes. So volume is still relatively in line with like where it's typically been, but he had a pick and pop 3, which I thought was really encouraging. So like that, I think, and we've seen this before in the preseason, because I remember writing a story, like my first year in the Lakers beat was 2020, 2021. And that's when Vogel challenged him to take, I forgot how many, it might've been 6 threes a game. I don't really remember, but I remember writing a story because I think he hit a couple in a preseason game, and it was like, okay, it's here. Like AD is going to continue the hot shooting from last season and from the bubble, and then it never translated into the regular season. So this has always been a preseason storyline: is AD shooting more threes and his jump shot and all that stuff. But he did hit a couple of other jumpers, and I just think overall, like 8 rebounds, 3 assists. We saw him operating more around the elbows a bit, in my opinion, more as a DHO guy. And to me, he looked really good. And then LeBron, if anyone has an excuse not to be right, it's LeBron right now, right? And he's going into year 22, age 40, but he had a couple of monster blocks to start the game. Was being really active on the defensive end in terms of like contests, and talked about after the game being used in different ways. And I think that's something you are seeing, whether it's AD or around the elbow or the top of the arc, or Austin being the lead initiator / playmaker. You are seeing LeBron operate a bit more off the ball, but I think the offense looked really good again in the first half, especially with the starting group. And then, 4 turnovers for LeBron, and he talked about still trying to kind of figure out the timing of the offense, and that they're trying to push the pace a bit more, get out in transition more. And that's been an adjustment for him. So I think that will clean up, though that has been a little bit of a concern. If you remember, for those who've been watching Buha's block, I did like one area each Laker needs to improve on for next season. And for me, it was turnovers with LeBron. And you saw that a bit with the Olympic team too, where the unforced turnovers, the processing speed hasn't quite been 99th percentile like it typically is with him. So even a dip to like 95th percentile, 92nd percentile, that can make a difference in terms of turnovers and just defenses reacting. So I think that's one thing to just monitor with LeBron. But like, hit a couple threes. I thought the jumper looked good. He was efficient, and I think like it was nice to see the Lakers also go a little bit bigger. They went with AD and Jackson for a shift in the first quarter. They brought back LeBron and went AD, Jackson, LeBron. It was pretty quick. It might have been like a minute or just a few possessions, but that was something that like last year, AD and Jackson almost never played together, and LeBron did not play a lot of small forward outside of shifts next to Christian and AD. So I think that like JJ experimenting with that and at least initially going with a little bit of a bigger look in the first quarter, what was something to, be encouraged by. So I think I look at the first quarter as like that's probably the closest to a regular season rotation as we'll see. And it was only 8 guys. Max was the first guy, then Gabe and Jackson came in. But that shows you where the pecking order is right now. And I said it last stream that I think Max Christie has the potential to be the Lakers' best bench player and arguably their 6th best player overall behind the 5 starters, and maybe even push Rui or D'Lo for a closing spot in certain configurations. And again, I didn't think Max had like a great game, but I think clearly the coaching staff is high on him. This is the second time he's led the group in minutes, and I think starting to look more confident and comfortable out there. And then Gabe again only played 11 minutes. Jackson had 8 rebounds. I thought a couple blocks, steal. Did have 3 fouls, and he continues to just some of his fouls are hilarious is probably the word, and unforced, but I think Jackson is, it continues to show growth, and the Lakers, as I've talked about, like I think that there's a little bit more of a translation from like AD to Jackson in terms of skill set, and specifically with dribble handoffs, the screening game, the rolling game, the lob threat. So I think you saw Jackson operate in that way a bit in the first half. So but I started bleeding it to my third takeaway a little bit. But second takeaway for sure was like LeBron and AD looked pretty good. And if those two guys are looking like top 10, top 12 guys, which I think they looked like tonight, that's the recipe for the Lakers pushing for close to 50 wins and being a playoff team. So I think that was the most encouraging thing of all from tonight's game. And then takeaway number 3 was just the rotation started to crystallize. And again, Max Christie comes in for LeBron at the 7:05 mark. A couple of minutes later, Gabe and Jackson come in, and really outside of the Bronny shift for the 4 minutes in the first half, I think it was emblematic of what the rotation is going to look like, and it's going to be the starters, those 3 bench guys, and a little bit of Dalton. And I think Dalton, it's really going to depend on how's he defending, and does he have it that night in terms of his shot, and sort of just testing him out. Maybe he's like a 2-shift player, plays like 3 to 5, 4 to 6 minutes per half. And if he gets it going and he hits a couple shots, then you ride the hot hand and he plays a little bit more. If not, then you just go more with Max and Gabe. So I think like in terms of like the 9-man rotation, it's as expected with Max, Gabe, Jackson, and Dalton. And then it seems like Cam and JHS are going to be fighting for that 10th spot if there are nights where the rotation expands a little bit. And if it does, then it just depends. Like, do you want more of that explosive athletic guard who can get downhill and pull up with JHS? Or do you need more of like that defender who is not going to be guarded, but in terms of Cam, but I think like that, like he kind of fills that Vandal role to an extent, although as I have said before, I think there's a pretty big gap between them. So to me, like I'm encouraged by the rotation. I think JJ has been pushing the right buttons for the most part. And I've joked out here, like it almost feels like he has the playbook from Lakers Twitter of all the things that frustrated Lakers fans last season under Darvin Ham. JJ has come in and almost undone all of them or a lot of them. It's like, all right, Max Christie, you're elevated. You're arguably our 6th man. Like Jackson Hayes, you're going to play next to AD, and we're going to play some big lineups with LeBron at the 3. And, we are going to prioritize organization and structure. And, the offensive organization has been improved even through the first couple preseason games. So I think like overall, I know the Lakers are 0-2, and I know, that they missed the game to get some reps with the starters, but that first half to me was very promising, very encouraging. And part of it, I think certainly is matchup specific, where Phoenix, especially missing Yusuf Nurkic, they are pretty susceptible. Like, and I mean, they're, as an aside, like that lineup of Tyus Jones, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, and Mason Plumlee, which will be Nurkic in the regular season, like that lineup is just small. And it made the Lakers look huge because a lot of times it was Bradley Beal being, guarding Rui Hachimura, and that's just a mismatch. And having Tyus Jones out there next to like 2 guys who are 6'5", 6'6", like it's just a pretty small lineup. And then, KD's obviously big, but he's slight and he doesn't always play up to his size, especially at like the power forward spot. So offensively, they're going to be a nightmare to match up with for sure. And having Tyus Jones organize the offense and run things, like it is an upgrade to some extent, but it's also, to me, like I don't know. I have some concerns, certainly defensively with them, but like just in terms of even matching up. I think it's a big shift going from having Grayson Allen or Royce O'Neal in that 5th spot to now having Tyus Jones in that 5th spot. Like you're just so much smaller and so much worse defensively. So that's something that Phoenix is going to have to figure out. That was an aside. Back to the Lakers. Like I think this was a good matchup for them. I am intrigued to see like what the rest of the preseason looks like, and if the young guys can continue to show progress, how JJ continues to crystallize the rotation. But for now, I think there's been some encouraging things, and we'll see. There's a couple more weeks, and I think there are some things that need to be cleaned up, particularly on the defensive end. I think the Lakers threw out some zone there. I want to say in the second half, like a 3-2 zone. I like JJ's talked about, like they're very bare bones right now in terms of the offensive installs. But even with that, I think you've seen a lot of good back cutting, off ball screening, spacing, transition, pace, and LeBron and AD ultimately just doing their thing. And I think that the really intriguing thing with the starting lineup is just it's really hard to defend. Like there's no weak spot in that starting lineup, and most teams don't have 5 good defenders. So if you have a weak player on Austin or D'Lo, Lakers are going to put you in a pick and roll. If you have a weak player on Rui, they're going to put him on the block and he's going to post up, or he's going to post up in the mid post or around the elbows, right? So Lakers have different ways to attack you offense. And then that's to say nothing of LeBron and AD, obviously, who can score against anyone or any type of defense. So like that starting lineup is just really difficult to match up with. And yes, I think they could be exposed defensively, and teams that especially have quick backcourts and good shooting backcourts, I think can give them some problems. And it's going to be interesting to see like how they navigate that. But from an offensive perspective, like that's just such a difficult lineup to match up with. And I think having that almost makes your defense better. And they actually fared better defensively than offensively, technically, per cleaning the glass. And JJ's referenced that of performing at like a top 5 level. I think there's a little bit of fool's gold in there. I don't think it's a good defensive lineup. I still think like on a given night, you could have 4 arguably minus defenders next to AD, but I think the offense makes up for a lot of it. And if you're scoring a lot, it does help your defense. Like that's just kind of basketball 101. So I think that's why I like that lineup so much. And tonight was just another reminder of like what that lineup can look like. And I'm pretty sure the lineup low was LeBron at +9. Everyone else in the starting lineup was +10 or better. So like that again, just showing you against Phoenix's starters, like KD was -9, Devin Booker was -9, everyone was minus in the negatives other than Mason Plumlee. So like that just shows. I mean, the Lakers won the real minutes in this game, and that to me is like the most positive takeaway of all, just including like how they looked. But so I'm seeing a lot of comments in here, and I'm trying to. The one thing with okay, figured it out. This is my first time live streaming on StreamYard, so okay. So I'm finally starting to see your guys' chats. So if you guys have questions, let me know. We'll start the Q&A portion now for about 10 or so minutes, and then I got to drive back to LA. Let's see. From LeGoat James, I just don't see anyone beating the 2 best players in the NBA, Bron and AD, since Kobe and Shaq. To me, this is a repeat of 2020. No competition. I like where your head's at. I don't think they're quite at Kobe and Shaq level, and I don't think that's a controversial opinion. And we're not like we're talking about right now. Obviously, LeBron, I've said before, I think is the greatest player of all time. So I don't need to, defend my position on LeBron, but I don't think they're quite Kobe and Shaq level. But I think they're arguably the best duo in the league, and having the best duo in the league, I think, gives you a shot against anybody. And that's where I've said before, I think the Lakers are better than people think. I think they have a better shot if they stay healthy. Now, like their margin for error is very low because LeBron and AD have both been injured in 3 of the past 4 years. I think that the depth of this team gets pretty shaky if any of the key guys get injured. But if that like top 7 or 8 can stay reasonably healthy, I think this is a group that could win 50 games. I think this is a group that could win a playoff series, a couple playoff series. And once you're in the conference finals, you have a shot, right? It comes down to injuries and matchups and all that stuff. So I'm not as optimistic as you are in terms of like, I don't think like this version of LeBron and AD is like one of the best duos of all time, but I think they're arguably the best duo in the league. And if you look at like the totality of their run, obviously they've had a special run together, even with some of the lows, which I think were largely because of the Westbrook trade. But yeah. Okay. Question here from Ugo Chukwu. I know we're down on Cam Reddish because he's not proved he can be a consistent starter level contributes, but I'm low key still a believer. Would you let him earn rotation minutes? I think it depends on the matchup. So I think, as I said, like right now, I'd probably put Cam as like the 10th guy and maybe even guy 9.5. And it's really, do you need more perimeter defense? And is it maybe a player that is giving Gabe and or Max some trouble? And that's where if you could go to Cam, and I think the big thing with Cam, and I will say, he only took 2 shots in his 10 minutes, and that's what I want to see, honestly, is I think where Cam gets into trouble is like when he's trying to attack a closeout, or he's trying to dribble in transition, or he's trying to self-create. I just don't think he has that skill set at an NBA like level, like maybe on like a lottery team, but for a serious team that's trying to win a championship, or at least be a very competitive playoff team, Cam Reddish should not be in his bag offensively. I don't think his bag is good enough. So if he can reduce that and really focus on the defensive end and get back to being the defender he was in November, because I do think he slipped, partly because of injuries during the course of last season, then I think that guy is a borderline rotation guy, especially for this, especially if like Max isn't defending to the level that Cam can defend to. And I do think Cam's highs are probably higher than Max's, but I think Max is a little bit more of a stable and consistent and like technical defender. And Max has really good footwork and hand positioning. And I just think he's a very technically sound defender. So I do. And then I also think Max is a better offensive player, and he's a better shooter. I do think he's better at attacking closeouts. He's a better rebounder. So like in terms of Max versus Cam, I just think Max is a clearly better player. But if we're looking at Cam versus Dalton, or just the Lakers needing a 10th guy, I think Cam could get in there as long as he plays within his actual skill set offensively. So that would be my one thing with Cam. But I thought he had some solid stretches there. And again, he hit a 3. I thought he didn't force anything offensively and had a steal and a block, like made some defensive plays. So I'm cautiously optimistic with Cam. And I think JJ not coming in with the same, although they are Duke brethren, so that's one thing, but him not coming in with the same fondness for Cam that Darvin had, I think that's a positive, just because he can look at him through like a more sober lens. But Cam, like I as the 10th guy without Vando, you could talk me into that. I don't think he really should be anywhere above that. I still would have the other 9 clearly ahead of him, but I think there could be something there, especially on if they're playing the Clippers, the Thunder, the Celtics, these like multi-wing teams, and you need another wing defender. I think you call on Cam. From RV14, the half-court offense has been good so far, has the potential to be a top 10 offense. Defense needs some work, though. I think they're hoping the D catches up when everyone is healthy. Yeah, we're in agreement. I think this is, I mean, the Lakers had the 3rd best offense in the NBA after inserting Rui Hachimura into the starting lineup. And even going back before then, like another month or like a couple weeks, they were top 3. So I think we have a solid sample size of almost half the season of the Lakers being a top 3 offense. I expect them to be top 10, if not top 5. And at that point, if you're at that level offensively, Jay just talked about it. Like ideally, you want to be top 10 in both. 80s set the standard of I want to be top 5. I don't think that's realistic for this group personally, unless you're willing to compromise the offense, because I do think like guys like Cam and Vando help your defense, but they hurt your offense because teams aren't going to guard them. And if you are playing bigger, even like more Jackson AD minutes, you are compromising your spacing to some extent, unless you're just going to force AD to be more of a jump shooter, which I don't think he should be doing for more than a few minutes a game. So I think that there's a bit of an offense-defense trade-off with the Lakers. They don't have a lot of two-way guys. And so for that, for me, I think they should lean more into their offensive strength, which is like, I mean, that's the starting lineup. And just overall, I think they have more offensive talent than defensive talent. But if they can even be around league average or even slightly below league average, but a top 10 offense or a top 5 offense, that's still a really, really good team, and a team that, again, I think can make some noise. But it's really going to come down to like them fully clicking with JJ's offense and guys shooting better, because I think guys have been shooting poorly to start, but preseason game 1, game 2, I'm not freaking out. Question from Ethan Perez. Wait, as a beat reporter, would you say you're a Lakers fan personally? Like, I know you used to cover the Clippers. Were you a Clippers fan then, or were you like, damn, this sucks? In terms of fandom, I'm no longer like a team specific fan. I did grow up a Lakers fan, but for me, like it compromises my coverage a little bit. Like I think for anyone who's followed me for longer than this current stream, you know that I try to be objective, and I will give my opinion, and insert some humor or personality like when appropriate. But for the most part, I try to be as objective and down the middle as I can. And I'm not perfect with it. There are times where maybe the opinion or the bias will win out. But for me, it's constantly just trying to think about things as critically and as objectively as possible. So for me, once I started covering the NBA, it was sort of like, I'm not going to be fans or a fan of teams. I'm not going to be a fan of players. Some people are capable of doing it. Like I think the best example is Bill Simmons, where he can talk about the league and give opinions on things and still be a huge Celtics fan. And it's kind of built into his coverage and his analysis. But for me, I just decided that if I'm going to be covering these guys in the locker room, I don't want to be fanning out. And again, there are some people who do that, and that's cool for them. But I feel like to be taken seriously as a reporter, I think I need to treat it like a job and not be, and that's why, like, and it's worked against me sometimes because I've been critical in my reporting or my opinion. And sometimes it comes back to bite me where people don't like what I say, but I can't help but like try and tell the truth. Like that's what I want to do with all of this, and bringing you guys behind the scenes and trying to just be as honest as possible. So I would say, like, yes, I did grow up a Lakers fan, but once I started covering the NBA and getting credentialed and going in locker rooms, for me, that the fandom, like, there's certain storylines that I'll be a fan of. Like I think the LeBron Bronny thing is one of those things where it's just a cool storyline, right? And there's a human interest element to it. So like I will root for certain storylines but for me, it's just I had to kind of separate that fan part from my coverage part. And again, no shade at anybody. People can cover it however they want. For me, I found that's the best way for me. Question from Barath Ram. Do you think this type of motion offense is sustainable for an 82-game season where LeBron is almost 40? Sometimes LeBron is the offense. Also, what did you see in our defensive schemes? Yes, I think it's sustainable, particularly when LeBron's off the floor. Like I think maybe you do shift the offense a bit or run it a certain way when LeBron is on versus off. But I think LeBron's just a freak, and he keeps himself in amazing condition. And I think that the way you want to be careful with LeBron is probably more on the defensive end in terms of the workload, because you just need so much from him offensively still. So I'm not as worried about LeBron and like the motion offense and how it's going to affect him. In terms of defensive coverage, they are switching a lot more. That is something I've noticed. And I think I felt like Jackson was in more drop last game, and they kind of cleaned that up a bit and was a bit more personnel based. Like right now, the Lakers have been operating more as through their own lens versus like a game specific or game plan specific lens, right? So I think that's something you're going to see shift progressively throughout the preseason, and then especially leading into the regular season, where it's going to become about that game plan and that matchup and that opposing personnel and like what's the optimal way to defend them, what's the optimal way to attack them. So I still feel like they're in a lot of their base defensive coverages. I have seen some progress. I think the switching, but it's also been without Vando. There's just not a lot of size and length and athleticism, especially on the perimeter. So I don't think the defenses look great, to be honest, but I think that's the one area. I think the offense is ahead of the defense right now. I also think the offense is just better than the defense with this current personnel. And to me, I thought that the 3-2 zone that they threw out was interesting. You look at a team like Miami, they'll always junk up a game with different zones. And I think JJ just experimenting like that. That's another thing. I think JJ's experimented a lot. He went to Rui at the 5 again. I think he's talked about just wanting to tinker and experiment with things in the preseason. So I'm still kind of analyzing the defensive scheme. I want to rewatch this game and get a better grasp of it. But right now, I've noticed more switching than last year. I think using the bigs in a little bit more personnel specific ways. And I think that's encouraging. But I also think guys have struggled sometimes to navigate screens. Guys have struggled with off-ball switches. And overall, some of the rotations haven't been as crisp as you would like. So I think the defense is much more of a work in progress than the offense. This is a good question from Dark Galaxy. Why are they going more 4 out, 1 in? Why not 5 out right now? Do you expect more 5 out during the regular season? So I actually talked to JJ Redick about this after practice yesterday. And because I asked him about running 5 out and sort of the progression of the offense. And he actually said that they're trying to focus more on 4 out, 1 in right now. And so my understanding is they're going to be running both. But because they ran so much 5 out last year and primarily switched to a 5 out offense, and that's really the primary offense for a lot of teams right now, that JJ is really trying to hammer in 4 out, 1 in concepts. So it's more of like trying to get some of the habits and tendencies from last year out of them. So I think, right now it's almost like, it's sort of like when you're trying to, if you play basketball, you're trying to develop your left hand, you're going to focus a lot more on left-handed dribbling and layups and finishing and just trying, like, you might even do some stuff with like your right arm behind your back to really focus on the left hand. And in like a game, you're not going to obviously do that. But for them in the preseason, I think the focus has been, let's get into some of these 4 out, 1 in concepts with guys in the dunker spot, including guards in the dunker spot. Jay just talked about Bronny in the dunker spot, D'Lo in the dunker spot. So I personally think, like, if I had to put a percentage on it of like what I'd like, I'd probably, I think this team is probably a little bit better in a 5 out sense. And I thought you saw last year the offense looked much better to me than it did 2 years ago, post trade deadline. Now, they did have Vando during that stretch, so that might have been why the offense didn't look as good. But they also were running a lot of 4 out concepts then. So I think for me, like, I wouldn't go 50-50. It sounds like they might be going 50-50. I don't have like official clarity on that. I would still lean like 60-40, 65-35 in terms of like 5 out concepts. But my understanding is that they are going 4 out heavy in the preseason just to unlearn some of the tendencies from last season and just more get used to running more 4 out again with this personnel. Because remember, like, Gabe wasn't on the team 2 years ago, Jackson was on the team 2 years ago, Max wasn't playing much, Dalton wasn't on the team, Bronny wasn't on the team. So for some of those guys, it's like their first experience just in general. But there's also several guys who were not used to running 4 out, at least through the prism of like this group and what that looks like. So that's a little bit behind the scenes on that. Mitchell, do you think LeBron and AD will make the trip to Milwaukee for the next game? I think they should, for consistency and getting this offense clicking. I don't know. If I had to guess, I would say yes. Now, with that, the one interesting thing is, so right now it's Sunday. Lakers don't play again until Thursday. So having 3 days off, you're going to be off tomorrow. So my guess is they're going to practice Tuesday and then have an early practice Wednesday and go to Milwaukee, or fly to Milwaukee and then have like a late afternoon, early evening practice in Milwaukee. So with that, I think just having that break is nice for LeBron and AD. And it's not like, I mean, they closed the preseason with a back-to-back, and I'd be shocked if they play in that, or if they play more than like a quarter in the second game, or at least like one of the two games. They'll probably pick which game they want to go for it more in, or to me, it would actually kind of make sense maybe to rest the first one and then go for it in the second one. But we'll see with that. But having 3 days off, I think, is nice for them for Milwaukee. So I think they'll probably play, but it really depends. It also depends on like how the next couple days go in terms of recovery. They didn't play. AD played 18 minutes. LeBron played 16. So they didn't play that much, but you just don't know how they are in terms of like feeling, how they're feeling basically after playing in a game. Justine, watching and supporting live here in the Philippines. Justine Severo. Thank you so much, Justine. I really appreciate it. That's awesome. Shout out to the Philippines. Eric, looks like this is going to be a fun. Eric Peterson, looks like this is going to be a fun team. Yes, I agree. I think it's going to be a really fun team. Okay, I'm going to do a couple more, then I'm going to get out of here because, again, I got to drive back to LA. Cypod, hi, Jovan. Do you like the fact that Knecht has been involved in the offense a lot so far, these two games? Yes, I like that they're just throwing Dalton into the fire. That's the best way to learn. And I've always been like that. That's one of my, it was funny talking about like being objective. Like I do have my opinions on stuff. And one of my opinions is like, I think young guys just have to learn. And that's something I wanted to see the Lakers do with Max last year, is just like kind of force him into that rotation role, especially because he was clearly going to be a long-term piece for them. But with Dalton, it's like, just throw him into the fire. And even if it's only 10, 12 minutes a night, I think there'll be nights where he plays more. But, 12 to 15 minutes for Dalton early in the season is going to do wonders for his confidence, for his comfort, for his experience, just getting those reps. And he's not going to improve defensively, and he's not going to improve in terms of reading coverages and countering coverages unless he's actually on the floor. Like, you can do it in practice, you could do it in the G League. It's a different beast at the NBA level. So I think just throw Dalton into the fire. I think they've done that. I think they've involved him very well. Offensively, I think they've leveraged his off-ball movement and his knack for cutting into open space, and just his ability to read screens, read defenders. I think he's very cerebral with that part of his game. So I'm for it. Like, just throw Dalton out there. He's going to be exposed defensively sometimes. He's going to go through shooting slumps. That's okay. Just let him figure it out. Dark Galaxy, are the Lakers heading back to LA to practice before heading to Milwaukee? Yes, they're heading back tonight, and they will be so they'll be back in LA early, 2 a.m. whatever, and then they'll be off tomorrow and then practice Tuesday. I'm not sure if I free Netflix. You recording this on a toaster, bro? I'm not really sure if that's a reference to something. Okay. Last one here from Steve Stevenson. Do you think Dalton gets included in a possible trade, or is he off limits? I think the Lakers would fight to keep him out of a trade. I think it would have to be like a no-brainer. And please don't aggregate this. This is not me reporting. This is just an educated guess / opinion. But looking at the way that they valued Austin Reeves last couple of years, looking at the way they valued Max Christie, when they like a young guy, they really try to keep him. And I think if you look at the types of frameworks of deals that have been discussed or they've been linked to, I think a far more likely scenario is like one of D'Lo, Rui, Vando uh, is traded, and maybe even I think they would trade JHS over Dalton. I don't think that's like a crazy stance either. Like Dalton's better, but I think that they would look for those three guys in particular, one or two of them, and then attach, potentially a pick or a couple picks depending on who the player or players are. Maybe a pick swap, second round picks, whatever. But like I think they would fight to keep Dalton out of it. Like that's kind of how they've operated. I think they've talked about Austin, Dalton, Max, and Rui for what it's worth as like part of their young core. So and Bronny. I don't think they're going to trade Bronny. So I would say I'd be very surprised if it's February 7th. Exactly 4 months from now, and Dalton's not on the team. I'd be very surprised. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I know it's late, a little bit earlier than the previous stream. Had to figure out this live chat with Riverside, but it sounds like the mic was better and the quality of the camera was better and everything. So I think this is going to be the setup moving forward. But I, again, appreciate you all for staying up with me, tuning in. I will be back Tuesday morning, potentially tomorrow night, Tuesday morning. I'm recording tomorrow night with someone who I think you guys are going to be excited for, but guessing I might be posting it Tuesday morning if I had to guess. So be on the lookout for that. And then I'll be back Friday. I'll be back Friday. Well, I'll be back Thursday night after the Milwaukee game, Friday with a stream, and then Friday with the second episode of the week. So be on the lookout for that this week. And as always, I'm going to be going live stream after these games. Probably not as long as the last couple ones. This has now been 50 minutes or 45 minutes and then almost an hour. But I appreciate you guys. If you have a question that I did not get to, I did not have the chat visible for the first 35 minutes. So let me comment on the video on YouTube and I will do my best to respond to it in a timely manner. But again, appreciate you guys for rocking with me, and I will talk to you very soon.